Have you ever wondered what happens the moment your heart stops beating? What lies beyond your last breath? Many believe that death is just the end, an eternal silence. But what if it's just the beginning of something much bigger? Today you will learn about a real and disturbing experience, lived by someone who crossed the border between life and death and returned to tell what they saw. It all began unexpectedly. The body stopped, the heart fell silent. For a few minutes, earthly life simply faded away. The surrounding environment ceased to exist, dissolving into a dense, almost palpable darkness. There was no pain, no time, just the strange sensation of being trapped between two worlds. Imagine feeling the ground disappear beneath your feet and being sucked into an endless void, where every second feels like an eternity. But what seemed to be just the end turned out to be the beginning of a journey that would change everything. A crossing that few dare to imagine, but that many recount with frighteningly similar details. And that's exactly what you're about to discover. If you believe that life ends here, prepare to question everything. If you've ever wondered what exists after death, this account will hold your attention until the very last second. So before we continue, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs to hear this story. What you're about to hear may transform the way you see life and eternity. The darkness was not merely the absence of light. It was a presence, a living tapestry that enveloped every thought, as if silence itself carried weight. At first, there was no fear, only strangeness, a colossal pause between one instant and the next, where everything seemed suspended. The sensation was of floating without a body, of perceiving without eyes, of existing without a name. There was neither cold nor heat. Only a conscious emptiness that called out with a voice that came from nowhere. Then something changed. A subtle vibration began to pierce the darkness, like a distant note humming inside and out at the same time. It wasn't sound, but it wasn't silence either. It was an invitation. The darkness receded a few steps, revealing a twilight that stretched like a corridor. There were no walls, and yet there was direction. With each step, a strange lightness arose, as if the weight of all worries was being lifted, layer by layer, effortlessly, without resistance. Consciousness expanded, memories surfaced like hesitant glimmers, moments from life, fragments of conversations, past choices, omissions, nothing accused, everything merely revealed. It was like watching a film made of tiny mirrors, each reflecting something that had always been there, but never fully seen. The memory of ignored glances, of words stuck in the throat, of promises that were forgotten. Each image brought a silent question: what really matters? Further on, the twilight began to lighten, not with a harsh light, but with a brilliance that seemed to emanate from space itself. The light did not dazzle, it opened. It unfolded reality, as if the whole world were a curtain, and behind it, there was a larger stage, a stage without limits. There was no time. The notion of before and after gave way, like a knot loosening. Everything was now, everything was here, even if here wasn't a place. The presence first appeared as a certainty, then as a perception. There was no defined form, and yet it was undeniable. Something, someone, waited in the center of this luminous clearing. The calling grew clearer, and with it, a peace that words couldn't express. It was greater than any known joy, deeper than any relief. The mind tried to name it, but the names were too small. All that remained was to move forward. On the threshold, a question cut through the stillness. Are you ready to see? It wasn't an external sound. It was a question posed from within, piercing everything like a blade and a bomb at the same time. Ready to see what was forgotten, what was denied, what was loved, what was hurt. Ready to see what became destiny because of small choices that seemed not to matter. The journey intensified. The light was not just light. It was presence, it was awareness, it was truth. Each step dissolved another residue of fear. Each advance made the heart seem to be silenced, to seem to be learning a new rhythm. If the body was distant, the essence drew closer to something that preceded the body itself. And before the threshold, a certainty formed with clarity. The journey was not an escape from life, but a return to what had always been behind it. Something awaited ahead, something that was not fantasy, something that could not be invented by the imagination. The corridor ended, the clearing opened, and the next instant, the instant that would change everything, approached like an inevitable dawn. The question persisted, now as a promise. Are you ready to see? And without looking back, the soul moved forward. The light took shape like an embrace without arms, a presence that needed no outlines to be absolutely real. In the center, a figure advanced without haste, and each step seemed to undo another layer of veil on the soul. It was Jesus. Not as a learned image, but as living truth, love that simultaneously calms and pierces. His gaze did not judge, it revealed. It did not accuse, it healed. His proximity did not cause fear, but a reverence that arose from the most hidden places of being. When he spoke, there was no sound, only meaning. The words came from within, as if they had always been written, just waiting for the right moment to be read. You were loved before you knew what love is, the phrase was a key. Invisible doors opened, and memories ceased to be mere scenes, becoming meanings. Each seemingly small choice revealed itself as a thread leading to entire destinies. Each refused forgiveness showed the weight you carried without realizing it. Jesus reached out his hand, but there was no physical touch, and the soul felt a warmth that dissolved old resistances. Look. Ahead, a landscape unfolded, not of places, but of consequences. Silent gestures transformed into rivers, intimate prides converted into walls. Acts of mercy shining like lamps in the darkest nights. And then came the people, forgotten faces, gazes that pleaded for attention, lives that were touched without being noticed. A network of impact, clear as crystal, nothing was lost, nothing was irrelevant. The heart, or what sometimes served as the heart in that plan, demanded escape. What appeared was not condemnation, it was truth. And truth demands courage. Jesus drew closer, and the peace that came from him gave strength to remain. Do not fear what you see, fear what you do not see when you choose comfort instead of surrender. The phrase cut like lightning. Suddenly it was possible to perceive one's own life as a mission interrupted by distractions. So much time spent on things that have no weight in eternity. The clearing widened, and on the horizon a more intense glow heralded something that had not yet been achieved. There is more, said Jesus, and his voice, full of meaning, carried a gentle urgency, an invitation that did not accept postponements. It was then that he showed the emptiness left by each denied opportunity, the hug that wasn't given, the word that wasn't spoken, the reconciliation that was postponed and never came. There was pain, yes, but there was also hope, like a fertile field waiting for seed. You will return. The announcement was like a coup de grace, firm and tender, and the soul trembled. Returning meant resuming the weight of time, facing routine, living the conflict between perceived eternity and the urgency of the days. Take this message. Life is not a rehearsal. Every gesture echoes, awaken them. The words etched themselves like a slow fire, impossible to extinguish. There was a moment of absolute silence, the kind of silence that only exists when everything is perfectly aligned. The presence of Jesus enveloped like the dawn, and his love was not distant, it was decisive. And at the peak of the revelation, a certainty settled in with the brilliance of an inner sun. Nothing would ever be the same. The journey had no end, because the return would be part of it. When the light began to recede, it was not a loss, but a sending forth. The encounter did not end, it transformed into a mission. And the soul, still full of light, knew, the next instant would change the world that awaited it. The light around them intensified as if breathing, and the silence transformed into attentiveness. Jesus didn't seem to be speaking to their ears, but to the place where decisions are born. The urgency wasn't haste, it was certainty, a calling that accepted no excuses. Time is short, the phrase didn't come as a threat, but as a wake-up call. It touched the root of choices, where life leans one way or another without us realizing it. Then he showed the world as one lifts a veil, millions of voices distracted by noise, empty hearts trying to fill themselves with things that have no weight in eternity. Tell them that life doesn't end here. Each word opened up space within, as if the soul needed to be expanded to contain the message. Images surfaced, family meals where no one looks at each other, promises filed away in drawers for tomorrow, talents buried under fear and justification. Every gesture echoes. It wasn't a metaphor, it was a law. Compassion reverberates, lies wound beyond the moment. Generosity builds paths where others walk without even knowing who paved the way. And indifference extinguishes lights that could have lit up entire cities with hope. Jesus raised his gaze to the luminous horizon, and the clearing responded as if space itself were bending. Awaken them. There was tenderness in the command, but also a pulse that left no room for neutrality. They were called to love more than to agree, to serve more than to accumulate, to forgive more than to remember. The sentence fell like rain on dry land. Hardened inner parts began to give way, and the truth found its way. It was impossible to postpone it. Later does not exist in a place where eternity is real. Faces came into view, people whose paths crossed and who were left without an answer, the neighbor who needed a word, the friend who awaited a gesture, the stranger who carried an invisible weight. Don't underestimate encounters. Each encounter is a crack through which the sky can shine. And don't romanticize excuses. They seem safe because they are acceptable, but they come at a high price. They cost days, they cost bridges, they cost destinies. The message was sharp and sweet, like a definitive consultation that not only reveals the diagnosis but delivers the remedy right away. Many are sleeping with their eyes open, the image cut deep. Sleeping while awake is living on autopilot, reacting to the world as if life were only a calendar and bills. Jesus spoke with the authority of one who knows the end from the beginning. Call them back to meaning, to love, to reconcile, to sow, to care. There was no discourse, there was a mission. And a mission is not debated, it is embraced. The soul understood that faith is not the absence of doubt, it is a decision despite it. And that hope is not empty optimism, it is a force that persists when everything calls for retreat. You will return, the phrase returned, now as a seal of the message. Carry the fire without shouting, carry the light without humiliating, carry the truth without crushing. Balance was sacred, it was not about imposing, but about igniting, not about convincing but about inviting. Tell me what you saw, tell me what you felt, say that I am near, closer than fear, more real than silence. The presence of Jesus enveloped them like a cloak that doesn't weigh them down, and the urgency took the form of a commitment. It wasn't a task, it was a vow. The climax came without explosion, it was a clarity that aligned everything. The message didn't need adjectives, it needed a path. Go back and share before the noise steals the meaning. The soul, full of light, understood. The life that awaits on the other side is the arena where this word needs to breathe. The world needs to hear, not to fear death, but to rediscover the dignity of life. And when the vision began to fade, it was not the end, it was ascending forth. The urgency remained etched like a gentle flame that will not be extinguished. The mission was already underway, and the next inevitable moment was approaching. The light began to recede like a receding sea, leaving the soul on the edge of an invisible continent. There was no choice, there was a summons. A silent force pulled firmly and inevitably, as if a thread tied to the center of the chest were being pulled back. The body, once distant like a memory, suddenly became the horizon. The peace that enveloped everything did not depart, it transformed into purpose. Even so, the feeling of loss cut deep, leaving the clearing to return to the noise. The first sound was like a blow, hurried voices, clanging metal, curt orders. The heart, the one that had been silenced, tried to relearn its task. Each beat was an absolute hammer, rekindling time. The air entered the lungs like cold water, a shock that reminded, the mission is here. For a moment, the mind wanted to resist, to cling to the place where Jesus was closer than thought itself. But resistance had no foundation. The force of the sending was greater than all wills. The vision opened like a heavy curtain, white lights, tense faces, hands searching for signs, he's back. The word wasn't just heard, it was written inside. The weight of the body became present, and with it, the limit, pain, exhaustion, gravity. There was a brutal contrast between the grandeur of what had been seen and the raw simplicity of the room. The world seemed too small for the message, and at the same time, too large for the amount of noise that threatened to drown it out. The soul understood. The miracle was not to escape the confusion, but to ignite meaning within it. Questions came. What did you feel? What happened? As the voices mingled, the memory of the clearing remained intact, like a seal. There was no space to detail everything, not without profaning the sacred. But there was one certainty that resonated with the language of mortals. I received a mission. The phrase was fitting without exaggeration. It carried the weight of urgency, the tenderness of order, the dignity of one who returns not through merit, but through mercy. The emotion rose like a tide. It wasn't weakness, it was recognition. The body trembled not from fear, but from shock. Around her, people who knew nothing about the light, about the question, about the healing gaze. And yet, they were precisely the reason for the return. Real people, ordinary days, small decisions that ignite or extinguish paths. The spiritual climax didn't stay behind, it descended along with it. It was a discreet presence, like fire under ashes, waiting for a breath. The urgent message pulsed, awaken them. The soul repeated it inwardly, as if rehearsing so as not to forget. At that moment, a sharp awareness, every second counts. Not as a burden, but as fertile ground. Routine would not be the enemy, it would be the terrain. The rush of the world insisted on crushing meaning, but the memory of the encounter stood in its way. There were instructions without words: to speak with humility, to bear witness without spectacle, to serve without expecting applause. To bring light without hurting, to bring fire without consuming was possible. The presence that had been sent remained close, even when the body ached. When silence finally overcame the noise, the question returned, now as a promise: are you ready to see within life what needs to be transformed? It wasn't rhetoric, it was direction. The return wasn't a fall of the sacred, it was the sacred descending into the everyday. The heart adjusted its rhythm, the breath found its cadence, and the soul, firm as one who had taken a vow, knew nothing would be wasted. The next step was not a spectacle, it was fidelity. The next instant carried a destiny, and the world around waited, unaware, the mission had already begun. The silence after returning was unusual. It was a heavy silence, as if each second were imbued with something that didn't belong in the physical world. The body breathed, the heart beat, but the soul still burned with the memory of the light. There was no denying it. What had been seen was not a dream, nor a delusion, it was truth. A truth so intense that it seemed impossible to keep it to oneself. The following days were marked by a strange duality. On one hand, routine insisted on pulling us back to the mundane: appointments, superficial conversations, petty worries. On the other, the memory of the encounter with Jesus remained alive, like a fire hidden under ashes, ready to reignite at any moment. Each glance cast at the people around brought a new awareness. No one is simply what they appear to be. Each face carries an eternity in silence, waiting to be awakened. The testimony didn't begin with words, but with presence. There was something different in the way of seeing the world. What had previously gone unnoticed now became a sign: a child's smile, the restrained tear of someone tired, a simple gesture of kindness. Everything seemed to shout that life is more than just survival. It was as if every detail was a reminder of the message received: wake them up. When the words were finally spoken, there was no rehearsal. They simply flowed, laden with emotion and an authority that didn't come from the voice itself. Telling what happened wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. The account flowed like a river finding its natural course. And every time the story was shared, something happened. Eyes filled with tears, hearts stirred, silences lingered. It wasn't just curiosity, it was an impact being generated in people. But along with the impact came resistance. Many listened and doubted. Some laughed, others looked away, as if the truth were too uncomfortable to face. And yet, the mission was not to convince, the mission was to bear witness. The weight was not in proving anything, but in sowing. Each word spoken was like an invisible seed, destined to germinate in due time. The testimony grew in intensity. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about urgency, the feeling that the world is moving too fast toward oblivion, while eternity waits. With each account, the memory of the encounter with Jesus rekindled within her, as if his very presence confirmed it. Keep going, don't stop, they need to hear it. And so, life became the stage for an unavoidable mission. There was no more room for empty distractions. What had been seen and heard could not be buried in silence. It was necessary to speak, even if the voice trembled. It was necessary to tell the story, even if few believed it. Because the truth doesn't depend on everyone's acceptance. It exists on its own, and it transforms those who have the courage to listen to it. In the end, only one certainty remained. The experience was not an accident, but a calling. The return was not defeat, but a mission. And the testimony was not merely a report, but a seed of eternity sown in a world that insists on forgetting what truly matters. And amidst all of this, a question remained echoing, as if it came from the very heart of Jesus. What will each one do with the message they have received? This question does not demand an immediate answer, but accompanies us silently, until the moment when each life finds itself before the same light. And so, after traversing the darkness, finding the light, and receiving a message that transcends the boundaries of life and death, only one certainty remains: nothing we experience here is in vain. Every choice, every gesture, every word has a weight that echoes far beyond what we can imagine. The return was not just a miracle, but a calling. A calling to awaken, to see that eternity doesn't begin after the last breath. It's already happening now. If this story moved you, if it somehow made your heart race or brought about unexpected reflections, then now is the time to act. Subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories. Each experience shared here carries secrets that can transform the way you see life. Leave a like so this message reaches even more people, and write in the comments what you felt when you heard about this experience. Your opinion could inspire someone who is searching for answers. And remember, what you heard today is just one of many stories that reveal what happens when the boundary between life and death is crossed. There are other equally impactful accounts waiting for you here on the channel. Stories of people who saw what few dare to imagine, and who returned to share secrets that cannot be ignored. So get ready, because the next video may bring a revelation you weren't expecting.